Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continuously unexpected. So uncivilized.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And it's Friday, so we are wrapping up the week with a look at some recent Star Wars news. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are before we get started?
My pleasure as always, Dennis. We are very conveniently found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We're now broadcasting to the galaxy. Here is our look at this week's Star Wars news. So up first, we have Beau Willimon talking about his interest in working on more Star Wars projects. You may be asking yourself, who is Beau Willimon? He was one of the writers that worked on Andor with Tony Gilroy, and he was speaking with the Rogues One podcast. And they asked him about his next Star Wars project. And he happens to be involved with the Dawn of the Jedi project that James Mangold is working on. So this is primarily why I brought this up in our news. It's kind of a confirmation that something is in fact happening with Dawn of the Jedi. But beyond that, he said that he had a blast working on Andor. And I quote, "I have my hands full with my current commitments with James," that being James Mangold. "So that's my first priority. But would I answer the phone call? Abso-bleeping-lutely, I would."
Love that.
And he followed that up by saying, "I have to be careful with what crumbs I unintentionally drop here. My diplomatic and honest answer is I had a blast working on Andor. I really enjoyed working with Lucasfilm, and I would be delighted to work with them more beyond what I'm doing with them now." That's the Reddit sanitized answer. So there is somebody who is very media savvy. So we're not going to get into the Emmy nominations, but they just came out like right before we started recording this, and Andor received 14. So we'll be covering that on a future episode of Star Wars News once we've had a chance to digest that. But he was one of the writers on that show. Andor is fantastic. This gives me a lot of encouragement for him working on Dawn of the Jedi, Jay. It's kind of nice to hear that something is happening with that movie, because, you know, that block of movies that were all announced at the same time, the New Jedi Order, the Dawn of the Jedi, and then the Heir to the Empire movie that everyone's been calling that Dave Filoni's been working on, were announced years ago, and we've heard so little about them since, other than New Jedi Orders had problems keeping a scriptwriter employed for it. But to hear that he's actively involved with this is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know, the writing for Andor was just chef's kiss. And I know he's gone on record to say his favorite character to write for is Saw Gerrera, and that he would, you know, if there was a spinoff show, that he would love to do something like that. And I just love the fact that he gets those characters, especially characters like Saw. And I saw an interview with him where he talked about like Saw's wackadoodle speech, and that's such a great way to put it. So I just feel like, you know, we are so incredibly fortunate to have such talent that is on board with these projects. And, you know, if he's, you know, giving his chops, which he is, to Dawn of the Jedi, wow. I mean, I'm so looking forward to that. And I cannot wait to see what it transpires.
Yeah. It's just kind of funny because, you know, this has gotten moved further down the line. You know, two movies that were not announced at the same time as this, the Mandalorian and Grogu, and then the Starfighter movie, are coming out before this, which is just, okay, fine. That's the way Hollywood works sometimes. People get involved in other projects. Development does not go the way that people plan. You know, pre-production does not happen the way people plan. But one of the things I've been doing the past week is I discovered on Spotify, if you have a premium account and you're the manager of that account, I have a premium family account, you get 15 hours of audiobooks on your Spotify. And so I use that in part to start listening to the old Legends novel, Dawn of the Jedi. And wow, different take on Star Wars completely and the Force and what
Mhm.
Jedi were and stuff like that. So that's really intrigued me and I've been enjoying that. And so now I'm even more curious to see what they will do with this Dawn of the Jedi type area. I mean, it's obviously not going to be the same thing as the book. They're not adapting the book. But again, just a different time, 25,000 years prior to the original trilogy, discovery of the quote unquote discovery of the Force, or how to use Force powers and the like. That could be really interesting. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, for sure. And what I also think is so interesting about Beau Willimon is that he's gone on record by saying that he's not as versed in Star Wars as maybe some of these other writers and contributors are. And I always thought it was really interesting that Tony Gilroy said sometimes the less you know about Star Wars, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm kind of torn about that because we've always said that we are so appreciative of all of these contributors that are such fans of Star Wars. And not that he's not a fan, and not that to say that he's not going to do things justice, but I just thought that was a very interesting take.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that's kind of come up recently is that these people that are not so shackled to what's going on with Star Wars, and that's one of the comments Kathleen Kennedy has made about how they're discovering that some of their projects right
Mm.
now, that the ones that are
Hmm.
doing so well are those that don't have to take into consideration so much stuff that's going on around that same time so that these creators can just make a good Star Wars project. And, you know, I feel two ways about it. One, excuse me, we've talked about this before. It's really cool when all the Star Wars stuff ties together. But at some point, it's just like, that's the objection we've had. Like, okay, you didn't honor this comic. You completely ignored that to tell this other story. And what you told is great, but then why did I invest myself in what came before?
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's just like, okay, but you just gave me something that was awesome. I mean, when you didn't sit there and think about all the other consequences, sure, that does a disservice to other projects, but it gave us a great story as a result. Now, I suppose there's a happy medium, a middle ground to all of that, but at the end of the day, we just want good Star Wars content, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. All
Absolutely.
right. Well, that's what he had to say. In other Star Wars movie news, Rian Johnson has been out talking to people, and I guess Vanity Fair and others, a variety actually, is where this story comes from. And he was talking about Knives Out and Poker Face, the show that he's got going on, I think Peacock is where that airs right now.
Mm.
But of course, as with anybody who does work on Star Wars, he was asked about his time there, and the conversation turned to this unproduced Star Wars trilogy that was announced prior to The Last Jedi coming out. Do you remember that, Jay? Like
Oh, yeah.
Bob Iger had done a investor call and mentioned
Hmm.
how Lucasfilm was working on a new trilogy with Rian Johnson, right ahead of The Last Jedi coming out. And so Andy Gutierrez put out that emergency broadcast for the Star Wars show talking about how this, they're going to work with Rian Johnson on a new trilogy. Man, did they overstate things. That's what it turns out the case was here. He, during the course of this conversation, pretty much says that, yeah, the trilogy has been scrapped at this point, but it only got around so far as them developing some ideas and some conversations that he had with Kathleen Kennedy prior to The Last Jedi's release. And the quote goes, "Nothing really happened with it. We had a great time working together, and they said, let's keep it going. I said, great. I would kick ideas around with Kathy. The short version is Knives Out happened. I went off and made Knives Out and was off to the races, busy making murder mysteries. It's the sort of thing down the line that there's an opportunity or do something else in Star Wars, I would be thrilled. But right now, I'm just doing my own stuff and pretty happy." And then he went on to say that the only stuff that had happened with this trilogy was it was all very conceptual, never developed an outline or a treatment or anything.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I remember when that investor call happened because you had gotten a hold of me and I had just gotten done running on my local trail and I was so stinking excited, like, oh my gosh, like this could potentially be happening, kind of
Mhm.
thing. And, it's again, the immediate Star Wars pipeline is already so crowded with
Mhm.
everything else, director storylines and things that are coming out, things. And I've often said this is like the whack-a-mole of Star Wars, right? So, I mean, as far as the future is concerned, it sounds like he's definitely up for it, but there's so many shifting priorities and he's basically bound to these other projects right now anyway. So of course, I mean, is Lucasfilm going to keep him on the back burner? I think it's smart if they do because he's proven himself to be amazing when it comes to Star Wars material. But I think right now, even though it's not canceled, it's being put on indefinite hold. And I'm not going to hold my breath for it. So what's your take?
Yeah. Okay. So that's not so much what I'm thinking about. Is that the whole notion was when this was announced back in 2017, we hadn't even seen The Last Jedi yet, but the
Hmm.
trailers were awesome for it, and so I remember being really excited from the time. And they announced it like it was this sure thing.
Hmm.
And the
They did.
conversation around
Hmm.
these movies were that these were things that were actively in development here. And so they went on to say stuff like it's going to take place in a different part of the galaxy with new characters and this, that, and the other. And it's going to be stuff that we haven't seen before. They really played it up like there's been a lot of discussions and we have these ideas and it's going to blow your minds. But now here they're telling us like we never even wrote a treatment, there's never an outline for anything. It was all just conceptual, just conversations. And I'm like,
Hmm.
well, that's kind of frustrating simply because, you know, they sold it to us as not that they need to sell it because we never bought a ticket for it, but it was being promoted as like, yeah, we got these ideas. Just you wait and see. What are you talking about? You guys never got to that stage. Why was this even brought up in an investor call? It's just we've been talking, one of the things we've talked about a lot over the past couple of years with all these different movies that get announced and then never get made, you know, Rogue Squadron, the Boba Fett movie, the Lando movie and stuff like that is like, wow, it's one thing when you start working on a script and it never pans out. It's another thing when you've got a treatment, it doesn't work out. You never got that far with this movie. It was just people tossing around ideas and let's make a trilogy.
Yeah, I think it was just the dangling carrot, let's give the
Yeah,
fans something to talk about, latch on to, and hope for, even
I
though we don't
guess.
have anything physical to
But
show for it.
here's the thing that's frustrating. It was 2017. Okay. The Last Jedi came out, and then we had Solo coming out, and then we had The Rise of Skywalker coming. There were other movies that were on the plate. Nothing had to be said
Mhm.
no contracts
Good
were
point.
signed in
Mhm.
this situation. And so, it's a lesson that this was the beginning of the lesson that I think Lucasfilm has finally started to figure out that's taken them years to get around is like, why are you talking about stuff that has not even reached the stage of development yet? Just
Mhm.
ideas at most a pitch
Right.
on this.
Literally putting the cart in front of the horse in
Right.
a lot of
If
ways.
Kathleen Kennedy and I step into the same elevator and I make a pitch, the elevator pitch going up from the first to the fifth floor, that's not, don't report that. But I can't say that this is anything more than that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't mean to make a mountain out of a molehill here, but I used to be a lot more forgiving about this. This just frustrates me that this is the stuff that's getting reported as, oh yeah, we're making more movies. No, you're not. You're not even really thinking about it yet at this stage here. So anyway, had to get that
Right.
off my chest.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Yeah. All right. Well, on to something that's way more fun. You and I were talking about this a little bit off mic before we started recording. I had an opportunity to see Superman this past weekend and was absolutely blown away by it. My favorite movie of the year so far, by far my favorite movie of the summer. Really, really fantastic. At any rate, the actor who played Superman, David Corenswet, turns out he is an incredibly big Star Wars fan. Have you seen any of the content about him online talking about Star Wars or his interest in Star Wars?
I have. Wasn't it his girlfriend or his wife brought him the Millennium Falcon Lego kit or something like that on the last day of filming, or something having to do with the Millennium Falcon? But I heard that he was a huge fan. That's about
Oh,
all I've heard, quite honestly.
I haven't seen that bit. I've seen other things that have come up recently. He was in his car driving around listening to the soundtrack for A New Hope. And as the music was playing, he was reciting all the lines that corresponded to the music, which was so much fun watching him do. He was doing the trench run on the Death Star scene. I've seen him do an interview where he was asked about what he would be more interested in doing, playing Superman or a Jedi Knight in Star Wars, and he easily picked playing a Jedi Knight. And then another interview he did promoting Superman, he did an impersonation of R2D2 being shot at the
Oh
end of
my
A New
gosh,
Hope.
so
It
great.
was so good. And then doing the sad beeps, R2D2. This is a man who knows his Star Wars. So anyway, if there's an opportunity to get him involved, sign me up. I'm
Oh
all in
yeah,
favor of it. Yeah. Uh,
absolutely.
right. But as part of all of his interviews, he's being asked about Star Wars, which is, amazing. I mean, someone's been in Star Wars, they get asked about it all the time. He hasn't even been in Star Wars, not even attached to anything, but he's being asked about this. It's kind of funny. All the headlines are that he has this really unusual way of watching Star Wars. And apparently he does a Star Wars marathon on New Year's Eve every year. Turns out he's watching the Machete Order. Except for he adds No New Hope. The
Almost,
Machete
yes.
Order is Empire. I'm sorry, he adds Phantom Menace. The Machete Order is A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Attack, Clones, Revenge of the Sith, The Return of the Jedi. But he throws the Phantom Menace in there with the original trilogy on this. But he goes on to say about this, you preserve the twist of, spoiler, Darth Vader is his father, and then you watch 1 through 3 as a flashback, essentially. And then 6, it's not as strong as 4 and 5 as a film, but it's a great culmination into the whole thing. It brings it all together. The stakes are bigger. If you've seen 1 through 3, it feels more like a saga. So I just threw it in there because, honestly, I was not familiar with David Corenswet at all prior to watching Superman. Man, he just blew me away in that role. I became a fan of his this past weekend watching that, and I would absolutely love to see him in Star Wars. And as we've gone online saying, on record, I should say, several times in the past, it's really cool when the people that are involved in Star Wars just love Star Wars.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And he's one of us, one of us. I love that he, like you said, he does this marathon and
Mhm.
he's obviously given a lot of thought about the
Mhm.
order. I mean, haven't we all? I mean, this is something that we've discussed at length about, okay, you got to show this to someone for the first time. How would you do it? And it's just great. He's so into it.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's just funny to me that, like, all these outlets that are covering this revelation that he watches in this odd order, and I was like, "Oh, what is it, like 6, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3?" No, no, it's Machete Order. It's like, "Oh, that's been around for years." It's just,
Yeah,
so
they were
everyone else
calling
is
it the machete order, but like you said, he plugs in Phantom Menace.
right, but, I mean,
So yeah,
that's the Machete Order for half the people that decide that they wanna eliminate a movie, so
right.
whatever it is, but, the other thing that occurred to me when he brings up the Machete Order this way is like, that's essentially what they did with the High Republic. They gave us, with phase one, what is essentially the New Hope and the Empire Strikes Back, with the way that phase one ended, and then they went back in time with
Oh
phase
yeah.
two
Mhm.
to give us all the stuff that was the backstory that set up in conjunction with phase one what happened in phase three.
Yep, that's a good analogy. I
Yeah,
don't think
and
I've
so
ever quite thought of it that way before.
yeah, so it's just kind of a
Brilliant.
now. I mean, that's easy to say because that's originally the way Star Wars came out. You're right, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy, but yeah, I don't know. I can't say that the Machete Order necessarily influenced the High Republic, but it sure does seem familiar that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be cool, just as an aside, if David Cornsweet showed up at Celebration in 2027 just as a fan? you know?
Oh yeah.
You
Well,
could
hey,
cosplay, a crossover Superman clone trooper or something of that nature, and then no one would even suspect it was him.
yeah, I know you're not likely to be able to have an opportunity to watch this movie anytime soon, but there is a conversation I'm dying to have with you after that actually is Star Wars related after you see Superman.
Nice. Oh,
So,
don't worry. It'll happen. It won't be
yeah,
for a little bit yet, but it'll definitely happen.
but remind me of that when
I
you do.
will. I
Okay.
will. Challenge accepted.
Really awkward tease I just left for everybody on this podcast. So I'm sorry for that, but it is what it is,
Tune
and
in later,
it will
everyone.
pay off someday, I promise. So stick with us. Okay, last story that we've got for the news this week is that the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art is coming to San Diego Comic-Con. And not only that, it will be George Lucas's first ever appearance at San Diego Comic-Con. He'll be showing up in Hall H on Sunday, July 27th, with some special guests that include Guillermo del Toro, Doug Chain, and moderator Queen Latifah to talk about their new museum. This will be the museum's opening in 2026 in Los Angeles' Exposition Park. And of course, the museum is dedicated to illustrated storytelling across time, cultures, and media. The official description reads, opening 2026, the Lucasfilm Museum of Narrative Art is a first of its kind institution dedicated to illustrated storytelling across time, cultures, and media. Co-founded by George Lucas and Melody Hobson, his wife, the museum's collection features works by artists including Norman Rockwell, Kadir Nelson, Jesse Wilcox Smith, N.C. Wyeth, Beatrix Potter, Judy Baca, Frida Kahlo, and Maxfield Parrish, as well as comic and art legends such as Winsor McKay, Jack Kirby, Frank Frazetta, Alison Bechdel, Chris Ware, and R. Crumb, and photographers Gordon Parks, Henry Cartier-Bresson, and Dorothea Lange. The museum also houses the Lucas Archive and containing models, props, concept art, and costumes from Lucas's filmmaking career. So, really cool that George Lucas is going to be there. I cautioning everyone that they shouldn't get their hopes up about learning too much about Star Wars there, because I feel like he's going to be more interested in promoting the museum as a whole. Now, it does benefit from the fact that Doug Chiang, one of the preeminent designers for the prequel trilogy and sequel trilogy after that's going to be there. But I couldn't believe that when I heard this was George Lucas's first ever appearance at Comic-Con.
Right. And it sure did hit all of the social media outlets like wildfire for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's understandable because here you have one of the, if not the best narrative art storytellers in the history of the genre of storytelling that's
Right.
going to be there. And so I just wow, I mean that's so incredibly cool for anybody that's going to be there and gets the opportunity to do it. And this museum of narrative art is holy cow. I haven't seen a lot of the updates on the construction
Mm-hmm.
because just that it hasn't been on my personal radar, but with seeing some of these drone flyovers and some of the pictures and things, it is just absolutely incredible. And I just think it's awesome that George Lucas is going to be there in person to promote it.
Yeah.
And obviously, showing his passion for this particular project. It's his own passion project in a lot of ways, and to try to bring these kinds of things to the masses. And it's just that's so cool. It's so cool. I just can't say enough about it.
Yeah. The museum looks like someone landed a spaceship in the middle of LA and then they built a park on top of it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really cool looking. It's very futuristic, very unique design. Put it on the bucket list. We're planning on going to Celebration in 2027, which will be on LA. If I got the time, maybe I'll stop by. We'll see. It's just kind of hard to plan out that far in the future. But it's as I've discovered through some of the documentaries that have been on things lately, like Light and Magic we talked about. It's weird because I feel like a lot these days George Lucas gets portrayed as someone who's kind of bumbling, but then you hear him talk about things and he's so incredibly smart. He's a
Oh yeah.
genius in his field, as you were just saying a moment ago. And I think this would be a fascinating panel. I've never been to Comic-Con and I'm not going this year, but just to hear his thoughts on the history of, this type of narrative storytelling, and to see, give it some sort of a preview of the displays and the exhibits that they're going to have at this museum. I can think of a lot worse ways to spend an afternoon.
Oh,
But
heck yeah.
especially having Guillermo del Toro, Doug Chang, and how fun is it going to be to like have Queen Latifah moderating this
It's a
whole thing
very
there?
eclectic group
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
So
And,
I'm just kind of curious how that came about.
yeah, for sure. And it hits me too. I mean, George Lucas is 81, and I often have to have pinch me moments that he is in that same, echelon of age as a lot of these, even John Williams and all of those that are up there. And they just seem so timeless in so many ways. But, I hate to put that out there in the universe. We've talked very often about how a lot of our stars and celebrities from the Star Wars franchise are getting up there in age, and so anybody that gets the opportunity to do this is just really fortunate. I wish he would go to places like Celebration, but could you imagine the line to
Yeah.
try to get his autograph, or to get, I'm sure he wouldn't do photo ops, but even just to have the opportunity for an autograph would be incredible.
Right. Because I remember when he showed up at Celebration 2017 in Orlando for the 40th anniversary of A New Hope, and it was like he was there and he was out after that. And
Yeah.
so I kind of feel like that's what we can expect of him going forward. But the other thing that's crazy to me, you mentioned he was 81. Harrison Ford just turned 83 this past weekend.
Oh, yeah, he did. That's what I'm saying, like, they're all, like, up
Yeah.
there.
And one, I
Yep.
would not have guessed that Harrison Ford was older than George Lucas. For some reason, the fact that George Lucas is the creator of Star Wars and Harrison Ford starred in it, in mind makes Harrison younger. Not that that has to be
Yes.
the case,
No, I get it. I totally get that. Yep.
but yeah, there we are on that. So,
Mhm.
all right. Well, I'm curious to see what comes out about this museum, and it's definitely on my bucket list to attend one day. But not much else going on with Star Wars Lucasfilm at San Diego Comic-Con. Nothing official that I've heard. The
Mhm.
only other thing that I've heard about is that the Heroes of the Halcyon podcast is doing a panel where they're going to be talking about things like Galaxy's Edge and stuff. So be on the lookout for that if you want some Star Wars content. But the High Republic has come to an end, so they're not going to be promoting that. They don't have another big multimedia initiative to promote. Still too far out to really get involved with promoting The Mandalorian and Grogu. So I know Disney's going to be there talking about the second season of Percy Jackson and the like, but just not much in the way of Lucasfilm and Star Wars this time around.
Yeah. Yeah, which is kinda crazy because we've always been treated to at least something.
Yeah,
But yeah, it is kind of weird to think about. That's for
yeah.
sure.
I think
Speaking of Batuu and Galaxy's Edge, and maybe I
Mhm.
just missed this the last time and it's just cycling back around. Did you notice on Disney Plus that they have a Galaxy's Edge and a Rise of the Resistance little mini documentary with no narration, no nothing. It just takes you through?
yes. In fact, I watched the Rise of Resistance one a couple weeks ago, and I've queued up the General Galaxy's Edge one. I just haven't had a chance to watch it, but I
Okay.
did notice those. Those came out I think during COVID. The Rise of the
Okay.
Resistance ride through was put together for people to just kind of enjoy while while the parks were closed.
So they
Uh,
are recycling them.
oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah, they've been around for a little while.
I wondered about that because 'cause I'm like, "Why is this on
Yeah.
my watch now list all of
Well,
a sudden?"
I deliberately did not watch them at the time because I didn't want to be spoiled ahead of going to Star Wars Celebration Anaheim in
Mhm,
2022.
mhm.
But I do remember, I think they were initially released on YouTube before they even
Okay,
made the way to Disney Plus.
okay. Now I
So
vaguely remember that now that you say YouTube.
yeah.
Hmm,
Well, so I think the next big opportunity we have for any potential news dump on Star Wars is Destination D coming up in a couple months, which is a kind of D23 esque like event that's going to happen in Orlando. I would not
mhm.
count on hearing much there, but anyways, we'll be looking out for news, so we'll see what happens. But with that, We'll go ahead and wrap up this week's edition of Star Wars News. Thank you all for joining us here on this episode of Podcast Stardust. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you want to get our weekly look on what's going on in the galaxy far, far away, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. And if you want to check out the rest of our back catalog, the best place to do that is openrentersapp.com, where we've got the entire previous 913 episodes. And while you're there, you can check out the other great shows on the network, including things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files, Animaniacast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots plus the Superhero Suite. Those are all currently active shows. Jay, I want to go ahead and remind everybody where we are on social media and elsewhere on the internet.
Sure thing. Same convenient places as always. We are Instagram and Facebook at Podcast Stardust. And we also have all of our Pinterest boards you can check out for all kinds of fun things for everything Star Wars. And then we also have our 2 YouTube outlets. So we have YouTube Music as well as the traditional YouTube. So no videos, static, wonderful images that Dennis picks out, but you can definitely listen to those there and leave us some comments, interact with us there, and also subscribe, because that definitely, we're still looking for that plaque, that YouTube plaque. You never know. It could happen. And then we also have our
2035.
Hey, we'll still be doing this, right? Absolutely. And we also have our TeePublic store, which has 7 different show logo designs available. And the link to that is in our show notes. So if you are in need of some new swag for yourself or for your cabinetry in the form of a tumbler and such, you can hit up that link. And all of those purchases do help to support the show. So we sure do hope you will snag something.
All right. You want to remind everybody what's going on in cosplay?
Sure. So my cosplay adventures are over on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And so once again, you can always catch me as Ahsoka, 2 different versions of Hera, my Force sister Inquisitor, as well as my original concept Mandalorian based on Tahiri Vela, and lots of other fun things as well, including Star Wars and non-Star Wars things. And right now, taking a little break for the summer. Got a lot of other things going on, but definitely going to get amped back up this fall. So once again, that is j.snipscosplay.
Okay, upcoming on the show on Monday, we are starting off the week with a look at episode 13 from season 2 of the Clone Wars. And then on Wednesday, we are getting into Revenge of the Sith for part 7 of our series, looking at that movie for its 20th anniversary. We got a great guest. We just recorded that episode, and it is really good. So make sure you join us for that. But with all that said, thanks for listening to episode 914 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.